Nigeria's President Muhammadu Buhari has constituted a National Food Security Council to address the issues impacting food production in the country. Emmanuel Ijewere, chairman of BestFoods Farms, joins us now as we delve into the task ahead for this council in ensuring food security in the country. Thank you so much, Mr. Ijewere, for coming on the program today. So, your perspective on this council and the impact that it's likely to make?
I believe that it's very timely. It should have been there longer before now, but nevertheless, it's a good idea. And it's going to make a great impact because it shows that government is focusing now on what we should have focused on long ago. Nigeria has almost 0% food reserve. In other words, we have no proper structure on the ground, given the fact that most of our farming processes are seasonal. The weather determines what we produce, where we produce them, and the quantity we produce. And what we should have done before now, which we're trying to do now, we're expecting this council to do, is to prepare proper grounds when there is surplus to preserve them first, and then keep them properly ready for when there is a fall in production.
Right.
So if that is the case, then we're talking about real serious food banks all over Nigeria.
Right. And do you get the sense that this announcement could catalyze a fresh wave of investments in the sector? We know that over the last 3 to 4 years, given the decline in financial markets and, of course, the recession, more and more Nigerians have been looking to agriculture. In fact, professionals have been looking into that space. Do you get the sense that this is something that is going to support that flow of investment? It
will certainly do, but you need to just step back a little and look at where does this come from. This food reserve comes from farming. Two big problems farmers have are, one, financing, two, the off-takers. The off-takers themselves have a problem. They don't have proper preservation methods. They don't have infrastructure to keep their produce for a longer period, like silos and so on and so forth. So this is certainly going to address that. But more importantly is the fact that younger people, better educated people, are now taking a lot of interest in agribusiness. Not necessarily just in farming, but in the value chain. And that is fantastic because then we are beginning to realize that agriculture today is 90% science, only 10% energy. And these young people will understand that. Putting an iPad or a computer in front of you will take you around the world for the best practices.
But I still get the sense that many are still looking to the government to try and help fix the value chain. So issues around seedlings, research, and so forth, that the government still has a role to play. And if we are to see this council make any significant impact, we have to generate a lot more investments in agriculture. And for that to happen, it does sound like the government still has a role to play there.
Now, you're right, but the government itself has recognized this. And through the central bank, they put this anchor borrower scheme, which seem to address these issues of funding and the off-taker situation. But what's exciting is the fact that better educated people are coming on board. And while government should always be there to support, government should not be in front. The private sector should be the ones that will drive it. If you go into agriculture, see it as an agribusiness. The days are gone.
But then, it's still that argument about the enabling environment. That is the role of the government.
Yes.
And there are just some things that the government has to work to fix. For instance, access to the ports for those who are looking to export agricultural products.
Yes.
It's not the private sector that's really going to fix that. So that is the point I'm making.
But you see, we know the limitations of government, and we know that the government has been very weak in terms of supporting business. I mean, look at what happened. The port example you gave. It took a Nigerian company, Dangote, to say, look, please, we want to get involved in it. And government was wise enough to say, please get involved in it. Because Dangote did the calculation of the economic losses. Government does not work that way. Government goes through bureaucracy and so on. Therefore, the private sector that has been standing back for so long and waiting for government should stop doing so. They need to partner with government. In many cases, government means well, but they don't have the right advice. And if those who are the practitioners, that's the private sector, don't talk to government on an ongoing basis, government will continue to make mistakes and do the wrong thing.
I want you to reflect on two areas which I think could really impact the success of this council. One is smuggling, which incidentally the president has said that they're going to try and tackle more aggressively. And of course the second is this issue around the cattle herders and the impact that they are having on agricultural investments across the country. I mean, I speak to some of those young professionals that you mentioned, and they speak of, you know, the discouragement where those cattle herders essentially go into those farms and really just create havoc for them in terms of the investment that they're hoping to get out of that. So I still get the sense that until we fix these two areas, that driving significant private sector investment into agriculture may be slow.
The cattle herders, for example, you've mentioned, I know that there are problems there. However, I think a mindset is being created that's negative by the press. When you look at the percentage of farmers that are affected, it's true when the farmer is affected, it's a total loss. But what's the percentage of farmers affected? How many cows do we have in Nigeria? It's not as if they're like a swarm going around all over the country. I agree that something should be done. The fixing should be pure and simple. Ranching is the answer. Cattle business is a business.
Right.
The same way as a piggery business is a business, poultry is a business. You, the owner of the business, must look after your own business. In other words, the rights of the farmer starts from the gate of his farm, and the rights of the cattle herder stops at the gate of that man's farm. That is all. You should not go and take your own responsibility to other people. That's basically what was wrong. But these young people need to be told that look at this in the right perspective. It's not as big as that. There's this agro-food conference going on now. You have the French, a lot of European countries, about 17 European countries are here. And what we have been with, what they've been saying is that Lagos, Nigeria is not safe. So that's what their people are saying. These are perceptions that have been whipped up by even our own press. And the international press has hooked in on that. And they say Nigeria is not safe, Lagos is not safe. Those things are perceptions and mindsets that create problems. They are not true.
What about the issue of smuggling? Do you want to comment on that?
Oh, yes. The issue of smuggling, the way to fix it, it has to be a radical thing. The entire customs department is so entrenched in this smuggling business that there has to be a complete change, a revolution. In fact, cancel the existing customs and put a new set there, because absolutely nothing is happening. The tomato industry has virtually been destroyed. 48 million farmers are going to lose about 15 billion in the next few days because the customs, despite the government's decision to have a tomato policy, as far back as March last year, published this policy, wrote to the customs refused to implement. As of today, they're just saying that, oh, they're going to look at the letter. What the government, what the Federal Executive Council took a decision on. So they're a government unto themselves. They are negative to Nigeria's economy. They create businesses for other people outside Nigeria for one reason or the other. So the smuggling and the customs are identical twins.
Interesting point you're making there. Okay, a final point on the issue of warehousing, because you mentioned storage as an area that we obviously haven't addressed appropriately. Now, that is another huge investment.
Yeah.
Do you get the sense that private capital is coming into that area too?
Private capital will come in. If all parties, especially the government side, let's take one, for example, the horticultural industry. You know, many of these things get bad very quickly. But other countries in the world have found solutions to them. Egypt, South Africa, and so on. They have huge refrigerated warehouses. We should stop telling ourselves that we don't have infrastructure. There are ways of solving those problems. Like they say, when the going gets tough, the tough gets going. If you can now make a policy, the government is beginning to do that, on solar energy, they can power these places to preserve these. The unit silos must be built in strategic areas, close to the market and not too far from the farms.
Well, we certainly hope that it works out. Thanks so much for sharing your perspective on this. Emmanuel Ijewere is the chairman of BestFoods Farms.